Good evening, everyone. My name is Kent Ho, and I currently serve as the president of the Student Government Association here at the Richland campus. On behalf of students of SGA, I want to thank each of you for taking the time to be here today. I want to first give my recognition to all my fellow officers here today, and hopefully you guys can stand up and show yourself a little bit. And make sure you give them a round of applause for being here today. And also my advisor, Director of Student Life, Dr. Frankie Ward. For those who may not be familiar, the Student Government Association exists to represent the student body, advocate for students' needs, and serve as a bridge between students, faculty, and administration. But beyond governance, SGA is about empowerment, making sure students understand that their voices matter and that participation, whether on campus or in the broader community, truly makes a difference. At the Richland campus, SGA works year-round to promote leadership, civic responsibility, and student engagement. We organize forums, discussions, and voters' education initiatives, partner with community organizations, and create spaces where students can ask questions, challenge ideas, and become informed participants in our democracy. We also believe that civic engagement does not begin on election day. It begins with education, conversation, and exposure to leaders who are willing to engage directly with the public. That's why partnerships like the one we have with the Richardson Area Democrats are so meaningful. They allow students and community members alike to hear directly from leaders, gain insight into public service, and better understand the issues that shape our lives. Today's event continues that commitment. It is an opportunity not only to listen, but to reflect on the responsibility each of us carries as members of our community. Whether you are a student, a first-time voter, or someone who has been engaged for years, your participation here tonight matters. We are especially grateful to be joined by a guest who exemplifies dedication to public service, advocacy, and community leadership. Our speaker brings experience and perspective that highlights the importance of informed participation and principled leadership in a healthy democracy. It is my great pleasure to introduce our guest speaker, Ginny Laughlin. Please join me in giving Ginny Laughlin a warm welcome.
Welcome. My name is Ginny Laughlin, like he said, and I'm the president of Richardson Area Democrats. We really appreciate the Richland Campus Student Government Association partnership. This is the third or fourth event that we've done with them, and they've always been top-notch professionals, provided a great venue, and are just really nice people to work with. So it's very much appreciated that we're back here again. Thank you, Kent, and your whole team for all the work you put into making this event what it is. And I hope that you all will agree that these students and this college have a great future. Before we launch into the evening, I would like to thank you all for joining us. This crowd and the folks watching at home across the state are a testament to how important this race is and how invested Democrats are in making sure we know these very qualified candidates so that we can send the best of the best into the general election in November. I also want to acknowledge the elected officials who are here tonight. Dan Barrios is City Council member. You may have noticed Dan outside. He's also running for Congressional District 32. Susie Stansel is here tonight from the Rockwall Democrat Party. She's the party chair in Rockwall. Thank you for coming. Vanessa Pacheco snuck in, and I'm happy to see her here. She is a trustee for the Richardson ISD Board of Trustees. Nate Clark is here. He is SDEC, there he is, SDEC 4. That's right. Is there any other elected official that I am not aware has snuck in? All right. Well, I also want to thank our promotional partners for the work you all have done in getting out the word to make this a success. First, Progress Texas is here. They're the top-rated progressive podcast in Texas, and they've promoted and are broadcasting the debate tonight. So thank you for all the work you do. Kathleen Thompson is, there you are, here tonight. Thank you so much. Next, I want to give a shout out to all the area clubs that are partnered to promote. The Feds, or the Funky East Dallas Democrats, as if you didn't know. North Texas Democrats. The Beltline Area Democrats. Park City Area Democrats. Women of Dallas United for Action. Garland Area Democrats. Lake Highlands Blue. And I think that's all I have on my list. Am I missing anybody that is representing tonight? All right, well, thank you all. Thank you all for this. Richardson Area Democrats is in our 9th year of this current iteration as a club. We were organized in late 2017 with the express focus of making the Richardson City Council more representative of its citizens, one of the most diverse cities in Texas. As well as making great strides toward that goal, we've created a vibrant community of compassionate and passionate people who are showing up to stand tall, shoulder to shoulder in these fraught times. We meet regularly on the 3rd Thursday of each month and have numerous other monthly events. Please join us by going to our website at www.rad.vote. Next month, we'll be featuring Gina Hinojosa for governor, Vicki Goodwin for lieutenant governor, and Jose Loya for land commissioner, among others. We hope to see you and to meet you soon. Well, we're here tonight to listen to 2 of the 3 candidates for the Democratic nomination for Attorney General. Senator Nathan Johnson, from right here in the Dallas area, is well known to most of us. Former mayor of Galveston, Joe Jaworski, came on our radar when he ran for this office in '22, visiting North Texas often enough to be familiar in his own right. The 3rd candidate, Tony Box, has great credentials as well, and we're sorry he was unable to accept our invitation to participate. Some of you have come already supporting one or the other of these candidates, and some are here trying to figure it out. No matter where you're at, we hope that this debate will solidify your decision. And now I have the honor of introducing our esteemed moderator for the debate. James Barragán is the anchor of Capital Tonight, Spectrum News' statewide politics show. He's covered Texas politics for 10 years with previous stints at the Austin American-Statesman, the Dallas Morning News, and the Texas Tribune. James earned his bachelor's degree in history from UCLA and minored in English. In 2024, he was selected as a Nieman Fellow for Journalism at Harvard University, where he studied the erosion of democracy in the United States at the state and local levels. His reporting has earned him numerous awards, including nomination as a finalist for the Livingston Award for Young Journalism and in 2023, and twice named a finalist for the Toner Prize for Political Reporting. James Barragán, welcome to the stage, and we'll hand it over to you.
Thank you so much for that welcome. First off, I'd like to thank our hosts, Dallas College. Thanks so much for providing this space for this very important discussion. I'd also like to thank the Richardson Area Democrats for the invitation to moderate. As Jenny mentioned, I used to work for the Dallas Morning News, so I have fond memories of Dallas. And I just love Dallas because all your political groups have such fun names. The RADs, the Feds, I hear they're in the House. I'd also like to thank the candidates, Mayor Joe Jaworski and Senator Nathan Johnson, for taking the time to have this debate of ideas. We know that they are both busy trying to win over voters, and we thank them for taking the time to come speak to this group. As Jenny mentioned, Tony Box, a third candidate in this race, was invited to participate in this event and declined. With that being said, ladies and gentlemen, please help me welcome our candidates for tonight, Senator Nathan Johnson and Mayor Joe Jaworski, to the stage. Let me tell you a little, you guys may know already about them, but let me tell you a little bit more. Senator Nathan Johnson describes himself as a seasoned litigator and a Texas state senator with a proven record of effective public service. He brings to the Attorney General's race both policy depth and legal expertise, along with a reputation for taking on the most difficult problems, asking the hard questions, and working to fix what's wrong no matter who or what stands in the way. Through his 4 sessions in office, there runs a thread of defending constitutional principles, advocating for responsible, responsive government, and insisting on fairness and consistency in the law. Ladies and gentlemen, Nathan Johnson. Elected after 2008's Hurricane Ike, Mayor Joe Jaworski served as the 55th mayor of Galveston, Texas. Joe risked his mayorship to support rebuilding Galveston's storm-damaged public housing as mixed-income housing for thousands, a game changer for the island. Joe stood for bringing families home to Galveston. Before his election, Joe successfully sued the UT system and its Governor Perry-appointed regents in Galveston to enjoin their sudden illegal decision to terminate over 4,000 UTMB Galveston employees, creating a program to rehire them. Today, UTMB Galveston is thriving. Joe, a third-generation Texas attorney practicing in the profession that his grandfather Leon and father Joseph pursued, graduated from the University of Texas School of Law with his wife Rebecca in 1991. Joe owns the Jaworski Law Firm. He is a respected national and international mediator, and Joe and Rebecca are proud parents of Joseph, a 4th-generation Texas lawyer, and Becca, a sophomore at University of Houston. Ladies and gentlemen, Joe Jaworski. Okay, so here is how this debate is going to work. We'll have about an hour of debate. Excuse me. We'll have about an hour of debate. Each candidate will have 2 minutes for an opening statement in the beginning and a 2-minute closing statement at the end. Questions will be posed to each candidate in alternating fashion, and they'll get 2 minutes to respond. Some questions may go to both candidates. Others will only go to an individual. I will strive to balance those out so that each person gets the same amount of questions. If a candidate is invoked or mentioned in an answer and there is a need for a rebuttal, they'll be given 1 minute to respond. I will determine the need for that rebuttal. We ask the candidates to please stick to the time so we can get through as many topics as possible. With that being said, we've got a lot to cover, so let's begin. Senator Johnson won the coin toss, so we'll direct the first question to him first. Senator Johnson, 2 minutes for an opening statement.
And do we have a clock? Time flies when you're up here, so. And I'm at 118 right now. Very good. I'm Nathan Johnson. I've been a state senator since 2018. 2019, I took office. I defeated Don Huffines, a multimillionaire MAGA Republican incumbent in a 32-year Republican Senate. Since then, I have been at the forefront of every single Democratic fight for abortion rights, for voting rights, for equality, equity, opposing gerrymandering, opposing school vouchers, trying to clean up our environment, for supporting our public schools. Every major Democratic fight, breaking quorum, I have been there, and I will continue to be there as Attorney General. At the same time as battling Greg Abbott's border policies, as fighting back against Bob Hall's attack on science and vaccine, and trying to save our schools from Christo-fascism from Mays Middleton, also running for Attorney General, I've also passed 135 bills to make our lives better. When Republicans did not follow my lead on Medicaid expansion, and I was the state's lead voice on that issue, I found a way to get 350,000 people health insurance, to stop babies from going deaf, to provide mental health for teenagers, to pass the only clean air, soil, and water legislation in the last 10 years. I was influential in preserving Texas's lead role in renewable energy. There's a lot of stuff that I can do in the Senate. I've killed Republican bills. I've unrigged bills that were rigged for the wealthy. I've stifled Republican bills that would stifle the freedom of the press. So why would I look to the Attorney General's office? And it all started at an impeachment trial of Ken Paxton. I had to sit there for 10 days and listen to his abuse of office, and I thought to myself, my goodness, this is a powerful office. $1 billion of the budget, 4,000 employees, 800 lawyers, and he's using it this way, but it could be as powerfully good under the right leadership as it has been powerfully bad under Ken Paxton. So I set me on this path, and you all have a choice to make tonight. And my opponent, and I think the clock is stopped, so I'll assume I'm going to cut myself 10 seconds short. My opponent's going to say that I'm not really a good Democrat, and he's already said that I actually wasn't leading the fight to impeach Ken Paxton when I was. Listen closely. You have to decide who you can put up against the Republicans in November to win this election, to flip a seat and get a Democrat in statewide office for the first time. Thank you.
Ladies and gentlemen, very quickly, we seem to be having a little bit of trouble with the clock, so I'll make sure to keep an eye on the clock as well, Derek, if you've got it resolved, but I'll keep tabs on it as well. Mayor Jaworski, please, your opening statement.
I want to tell you something plainly, without polish or spin. I don't lie. I can't be bought. And like you, I care about my reputation. I'm a Democrat because I believe open, honest government is a classic American value. Government should tame the savageness of man and make life in this world gentle, not cruel. That belief guides my work as a lawyer, my service as mayor of Galveston, and my decision to run to be your next Texas Attorney General. I've been a Texas lawyer for more than 30 years. I still practice law full-time while campaigning across this state. I return my own calls, texts, and emails because people deserve to know they're being heard by the person asking for their vote. I've served 8 years in public office. I've fought corruption in my own community. I've stood up to bullies and racists to deliver first-class public housing for working families. And I paid a political price for doing the right thing, never regretted it. I'm running because my conscience compels me to put my experience and problem-solving skills to work for 32 million Texans. We deserve better than the daily abuses that now pass for government. If I do my job right, people will see what public service looks like again. This campaign is built on hard work, honesty, and showing up everywhere, not on corporate money or political shortcuts. And winning this race requires support from you and people like you who believe Texas needs an attorney general who will not flinch, compromise with bullies, or look the other way when the powerful break the law. And so I'm asking for your vote in the March 3rd primary. Justice is earned by the work Americans do every day. I'm proud to be one of the workers, and I'm grateful to be with you here tonight.
Thank you, Mayor Jaworski. Let's stick with you. We have two candidates on stage tonight for the Attorney General nominee for the Democratic Party. Mayor Jaworski, what makes you a better candidate than your opponents?
Well, James, number one, as a former mayor of Galveston, I understand an executive position. This is a very lonely place when a hurricane-damaged storm requires the island to be rebuilt. When Housing and Urban Development called me and said, Mayor, you have all this money to spend for your island, but don't forget, you have to rebuild public housing. I took a principled stand as an executive. As mayor, I appointed the board that was the Galveston Housing Authority, a young, diverse board, and I put our best plan together. It bought me great grief from racists and bullies, and I fought them. That experience can't be learned, and it can't be faked. So, James, I think I am what Texas needs to fight MAGA. Furthermore, my wife and my family are fully supportive of my candidacy. Also, I'm a full-time lawyer. I mediated a case today and settled it for a man who was injured in Iraq in the war on terror. This is evidence that I have great capability and great capacity to work. I know the lawyers and the judges all throughout the state. I own my own law firm. I'll be able to re-nourish the woebegone Office of Attorney General, which has completely lost its morale thanks to the notorious conduct of Ken Paxton. And finally, I am the true progressive in this race. I am the true progressive in this race. And right now, what we need is an attorney who understands we don't help the powerful at the expense of the vulnerable. When you look at my opponent's record in the Senate, he is very comfortable cutting deals with Dan Patrick to keep his cherished committee vice chairmanship. That might be fine for the Senate, ladies and gentlemen, but it's not what we need in our lead attorney.
Senator Johnson, same question, 2 minutes.
Let's be really clear. When you send somebody in November to fight whatever comes flying out of the Republican primary, you want somebody who can win. Joe has lost 3 of his last 4 elections, at a municipal level, at a state level, and at a statewide level. I flipped a 32-year Republican seat. I know how to beat these guys, and it's going to be fun. Secondly, Joe talks about fighting. I'm in the fight. Joe talks about what he might do. I'm doing it. Joe's been running for 8 months on his grandfather's record. I'm running on mine. We need somebody as the chief legal officer of this state who understands state government, who, yes, can work with Republicans. That's how I managed to pass 135 bills. Who, yes, can stand up to authority. If anybody wonders whether or not Dan Patrick is fond of me, you could just ask him directly, or you can ask anybody in the Capitol why the Republicans sit up on the edge of their seat, take notes, and make phone calls when I talk. It's not because I'm cutting deals, it's because I scare the hell out of them. We need somebody who can get this job done, and I think it helps to have a legislator. I was talking with the incoming president of the Democratic Attorneys General Association on this very question, and he said, legislators make better attorneys general than prosecutors or plaintiffs' lawyers or defense lawyers, because this isn't a lawsuit and this isn't a law firm. This is policy at a federal and a state level. It is building coalitions among people who get along and among people who don't get along. It's advising agencies. It's understanding how the law interacts with businesses and people and local government and state government and federal government. And you don't learn that when you wake up in the morning and feel like being Attorney General. You learn it from being in the office, watching it done right, watching it done wrong. I can win this race. I can deliver when I'm in office, I can bring people together when necessary, and I can fight them when we need to.
Thank you, Senator Johnson. Mayor Jaworski, 1 minute to respond.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, I am proud of my grandfather, Leon Jaworski, who prosecuted World War II Nazis and the President of the United States after Watergate. And what's interesting about that, Nathan, is when you combine prosecuting Nazis and the President of the United States, what's old is new again. So Leon Jaworski's blood is my blood. So his legacy is something that I take very seriously, which is why I said I care about my reputation. My record, Nathan, let me tell you, when I was mayor of Galveston, I stood alone in a very lonely spot, and I delivered for the working poor of Galveston. James, I think that that's a good example of what Texas needs right now. We don't need a deal cutter who, for example, voted for Senate Bill 2972, the Campus Security Act, selling our students out. We need someone who will stand for the Constitution, and that is what Joe Jaworski will do. I'll be proud to do it for you.
Senator Johnson, 1 minute to respond on this deal maker comments from Mayor Jaworski.
Sure. Again, anybody who watches One Day of the Senate knows that I am not a deal maker. I have been on the 29-2 side, or the 30-1 side, or the 30-1 side many, many times. As for specific bills that Joe likes to mention, I'll point out that he doesn't like a vote that I took that is the same vote that James Tallarico, Gina Hinojosa, John Busey, Trey Martinez-Fisher, and many, many progressive Democrats. But he would have you believe that that wasn't a good vote. I do what's right, and sometimes that means voting as a bloc with the Democrats, and sometimes I might have a different view. But I'm always looking out, what is the best way I can get to the other side of this 140 days with all the 10,000 forces that are operating at once and get the best result on any issue. And yes, I don't want the Proud Boys occupying college campuses. I want to preserve the rights for students to have free speech, which is why I voted the way I did, which is why other good Democrats voted the same way.
Thank you, Senator Johnson. Let's stick with you. If you are elected as Attorney General, you may be one of the only Democrats in executive office in a deeply Republican state, and you would have to defend policies passed by Republican officials over the last 2 decades. Would you defend all Texas laws? And if not, how would you decide whether to support duly passed laws that you, as a member of the Democratic Party, perhaps disagree with? Can you give any examples?
And this is a favorite question. Like, what are you going to do about defending all these terrible Republican laws? And there's a lot of bad ones. But take a look at the Constitution and what it says. The Constitution says that the Attorney General represents the state of Texas in the appellate courts, the Supreme Court, on all these laws. Who's the state of Texas? Is it Greg Abbott? No. Is it the legislature? No, it's you. I represent you. And I, as an independently elected executive office, am the opinion of the state. And if my opinion is that that law is unconstitutional, the position of the state is not going to be that the law is constitutional. It's going to be that it's unconstitutional. If that law violates or conflicts with state law, if that law violates or conflicts with federal law, if that law violates your fundamental rights, that will be the position of the state. Other times, there's just crappy laws that none of us like. But if it's not unconstitutional, and if it doesn't violate some sort of statutory prohibition on something, or if it's not inconsistent, if there's no basis on which to say it's not a duly passed or enforceable law, I will defend it. I will defend the legislature's right to pass bad laws, because more than anything else in this country right now, we are suffering under Donald Trump and under Greg Abbott and Dan Patrick and the whole Republican MAGA machine a disregard for the rule of law, an erosion of constitutional principles, a tumbling of the walls that separate the different branches of government, and I pledge to uphold that. And if it means defending a stupid Republican law, then we all got to get together and elect a new legislature. But where there is an issue that requires discretion and my own independent legal analysis with some really, really good lawyers, smarter people than me who are going to come work at the Attorney General's office, the position of the state of Texas will represent you, not Greg Abbott, not a Republican-led legislature.
Thank you. Mayor Jaworski, same question.
Well, Dallas, one thing's for sure. I'm counting on us having a Democratic governor, a Democratic lieutenant governor, and majorities in both the House and the Senate. In the event we don't, you can count on me to stand my ground, like I did in Galveston, like I do in court for my clients, because 32 million Texans would require that of me. Right now, we don't even remember, unless you're 63 years old like I am, what it was like to have a Democratic government, what it was like to have a Democratic Attorney General, like Dan Morales, like Jim Maddox, like so many great ones. We've had John Cornyn, we've had Greg Abbott, we've had Ken Paxton, and they've all been the sort of lawyer where the fix is in, and they support the Republican team. So let's just take a hypothetical that because it's an open race, and because the Republicans are going to nominate someone who truly is absurd, it's either going to be Chip Roy or MAGA Mays Middleton. I think he actually changed his name. One of those two has a record so bad already, and Nathan, I bet you'll agree with me, that there's going to be a runoff in the Republican primary for sure. So that's going to be 75 more days of them ruining each other's pelts. What we're going to see is such an outrageous, absurd record of what they've said that I think the Democrats have a great shot. So if we have Abbott, Patrick, and Jaworski as your Attorney General, I'm not going to carry their water just because somehow the law, says that the Attorney General is supposed to defend the state. We've seen Ken Paxton say, no, I'm not doing it any number of times. At least my decision will be a principled one. For example, abortion laws. For example, violations of the constitutional right to assemble on a campus. I won't support those things. They can get another lawyer. I'll be on the side of the people.
Thank you, Mayor Jaworski. We'll have more discussion on some of these laws, and we'll get more specific going into the debate. Next question is for Mayor Jaworski. Your main experience in government is as mayor of Galveston. You do have experience as an executive, but that's for a city of about 60,000 people. You don't have experience at the state government level. Why should voters still trust you to lead one of the main executive offices in the state? 2 minutes.
Because you are tired, just like I am, of the same old, same old. It's like an Austin bubble that just keeps procreating and creating more of the same. What I like about my experience as mayor is local government matters. And as you know, our state is a big state with cities from east to west, north to south, counties, school districts. My experience as a local leader gives me real authority to be able to say, let the cities be the cities, let the counties be the counties, et cetera. And also, I'm a lawyer. I mean, isn't that what the whole office is about, Attorney General? I'll put my record as an attorney up against any of the candidates that I'm running against. I've been a trial lawyer for 35 years. I have resolved over 500 cases in court. As a mediator, I have settled over 10,000 claims in the last 15 years. Now, you heard James tell you a little bit about my biography. I mean, after Hurricane Ike, there we were, all our homes flooded, the University of Texas medical branch, the proudest medical institution in the state that graduates every year, the most diverse body of healthcare professionals in America. In the 1900 storm, Dallas, there was a famous wire sent from the governor, "Are you open?" After the 1900 storm, the president of UTMB said the University of Texas medical branch closes for no storm. But because Michael Dell gave the University of Texas system billions of dollars to build a medical school in his name, the decision makers there thought it was time to close Galveston down. I said, I don't think so. So I got clients lined up and I filed suit against the University of Texas system and all 9 Rick Perry appointed regents. They hired David Beck, one of my grandfather's partners at Fulbright Jaworski, to come beat me. But I beat him in Galveston, and we reopened it. That's the experience that I think matters.
Senator Johnson, your main experience in government has been as a state senator. You've not held an executive office. The Attorney General is the top law enforcement officer in the state and oversees hundreds of lawyers. Why should voters trust you to step into this role without prior executive experience?
There's 2 things I want to talk about where state government experience matters. Look, I run an office of 9 employees in the Senate, and they're like 4,000 people. They work very hard. They're hard to manage. No, they're the greatest people ever that I've ever worked with, and I look forward to working with great people at the Attorney General's office, 4,000 of them and 800 lawyers. But where the state government experience really matters, not in the managerial level, I have people help me with that. Where it matters is in your ability to preserve the powers of the office, number one, and secondly, to work with the legislature to make sure that the Attorney General has in the future the ability to protect citizens from the things we don't know yet. For example, artificial intelligence is creating all new ways to scam people. I passed a law last session, created a new crime for AI scams. We have elderly people whose artificially intelligence-generated grandson voices call them to scam them out of money. I passed a bill on that. What else are we going to need? Are we going to need it in politics? We surely are going to need political laws to stop AI from throwing elections. The legislature needs to pass new laws, and I, as the Attorney General, and my great lawyers and my great policy people will go to the legislature, and I know how to work with them, and say, pass laws that allow me to protect people. Secondly, what if we have divided government? What if the Republicans are very angry that a Democrat is in the Attorney General's office, and they decide to strip it of power? That's a real risk. Now, some of the authority is constitutional that they can't take away. But I have the ability to work with Republicans, say, be careful. I will be objective. I will uphold the rule of law, but we have to preserve the funding for that office, the resources for that office. And I think among all the candidates, I'm the only Democrat that has the probability of holding together the powers of the office that we all rely upon to keep markets efficient and fair and protect consumers from predation and work with DAs and all the other things we have to do.
Mayor Jaworski, let's get into some issues. Last year, state officials passed a law that would apply sex-based restrictions on restrooms and changing rooms in publicly owned buildings. People are now restricted to using the restrooms that match the sex on their original birth certificate when they were born. Individuals who use public facilities that do not match those restrooms are not penalized by this law, but the government agencies in charge of the restrooms, including cities, counties, schools, and places of higher education, of course, are subject to $25,000 for a first infraction and $125,000 each day per subsequent infraction. Opponents of the law fear this could severely impact the bottom line of government entities and also impact transgender Texans. How would your office handle the enforcement of this law?
Well, I'm not so sure the Attorney General's office is supposed to enforce it. I mean, Ken Paxton wants the tip line, if you recall. He's got a tip line, and you can rat out someone who sneaks into the bathroom real quickly and back out. Outrageous. This, of course, benefits Ken Paxton in running for the United States Senate because the paltry number of Texas voters who will decide the Republican primary against John Cornyn and him gives him a leg up. James, to flatly answer your question, I find the law odious, and I don't believe it's constitutional in the slightest. It's also impossible to enforce, which, as you've reported, and Nathan well knows, it is one of the most difficult to enforce. It's not the state's job to enforce it. The state may have passed the law, but it is up to each city or school district or public ownership county, for example, swimming pool, city swimming pool. So if local authorities want to enforce it, maybe I'll get involved to determine whether they're enforcing it correctly or whether they should enforce it at all. But as Attorney General, I'm not going to take that bait. I think the law is odious. And honestly, anything Mays Middleton puts out there, you really ought to question about. As you know, MAGA, as he calls himself, is running on the fact that he kept men out of girls' bathrooms. And what I appreciate about his ads is how comical they are. And what we need to remember, James, is that when Democrats are running against these Republicans in November, we need to ridicule them for what they're doing and how they have brought government into an absurd zone. What I really hate about MAGA Mays' ads is the sound of the monster truck rally voice that always starts, the introduction. And then when he speaks, it's just like a beautiful sign, a spring day.
That's time. Thank you, Mayor Jaworski. Senator Johnson, same question.
There's some ugliness in primary debates between Joe and I, but we do agree on some things, and one of those is that Mays Middleton is funny. And adding to the humor, if you want to go through the archives and watch one of the funniest exchanges in Senate history, watch the youngest senator, Molly Cook, take on Mays Middleton on this stupid bathroom bill. Just absolutely lacerates him. It was a great moment in the Senate. I rushed down and moved that it be recorded to the Journal, which made Dan Patrick turn the color of an eggplant. It's a dumb law. The tip line, if I'm Attorney General, will not have anyone answering it. I do think that the statute, if I'm remembering correctly, the statute actually expressly charges the Attorney General with enforcing it. Whoever the Attorney General is, they have discretion on how to use their employees. There's, some like narco trafficking and Medicaid fraud and corruption to root out and markets to fix. So I'm thinking that the priority of enforcing this, I agree, unenforceable, ridiculous bathroom bill is going to be so low, I just can't see getting around to it.
Thank you, Senator Johnson. Senator Johnson, will stick with you. Earlier this week, Attorney General Ken Paxton issued a 74-page legal opinion that criticized his opponent in the Senate race former Attorney General John Cornyn, and declared hundreds of Texas laws were unconstitutional because they followed diversity, equity, and inclusion initiatives. Experts have criticized the opinion because it reportedly was not requested by anyone and was self-initiated by the Attorney General, a highly unusual move, and they have noted it is not legally binding. What do you believe is the appropriate use of these types of legal opinions, and would you pursue action on this opinion issued by Attorney General Paxton?
You talk about abuse of office. There's no binding effect on that, but it affects the dialogue, it affects the rhetoric, it scares private entities, it scares government officials, it's intimidation. It is an inappropriate use of the office. I do think it's appropriate for the Attorney General to issue opinions on matters of serious public concern when litigation is pending or litigation is about to be filed, or say the legislature on the right wing passes something crazy unconstitutional. I think it's okay for the Attorney General to let the public know where we stand with the law. But this is so clearly fitting the pattern of, I don't know if it's really actually coming out of Ken Paxton's mind or it's just a response to puppet strings that are actually wired inside his head to tell him when to file which ridiculous suits and when to issue which ridiculous Attorney General opinions. But I think it's absolutely abhorrent. Now, fortunately, there is a lawsuit on this subject, and a district court judge already smacked down Ken Paxton and said, this HUB program, the historically underutilized business program, is absolutely constitutional. In fact, your lawsuit, Mr. Plaintiff, supported by Ken Paxton, is so bad, we're dismissing it without even having a trial. So I think there is a place for an Attorney General opinion to help guide the public, to help guide agencies with what's appropriate and what's inappropriate. But this is a flat-out reversal of what the state of Texas has been doing for decades. Suddenly, Ken figured it all out. There's never been a lawsuit. There's never been a judicial decision striking this down. That's nonsense, and it is misuse of the office, and it underscores the importance of getting the Republican Party out of there. I don't care which Republican comes out. They cannot think for themselves. They will not think for themselves. They'll continue this kind of crap. We have got to get an Attorney General in the office who is a Democrat who will use it appropriately.
Thank you, Senator Johnson. Mayor Jaworski, same question. 2 minutes.
Well, James, what's incredible is that this articulated opinion that no one asked for was done to help his campaign for U.S. Senate. He actually reverses an Attorney General opinion that John Cornyn issued during the 2 years he was Attorney General. And that's the whole reason it happened. Because there is a lawsuit on file and there are clearly constitutional interpretations that enforce and support affirmative action. I mean, let's go back to LBJ. I mean, we know that this was something about tangible results, not just bromides or promises. And so Ken Paxton wants to bring this up in his campaign. James, the opinion has no legal weight, especially since there are already cases on file, because we all know these Attorney General opinions only exist in a vacuum if there isn't judicial created law already on the books. Since there is, his 70-page opinion goes right in the file.
Mayor Jaworski, let's stick with you. This week, the Fifth Circuit Court of Appeals heard a case on a Texas law requiring that public school classrooms hang up a copy of the 10 Commandments if a display of them is donated to a school. Do you think this law passes legal muster, and would you defend it in court? And if not, how should the state handle implementation of this law?
Yeah, no, it's unconstitutional. It will not stand up in court. What's interesting is before I started as a lawyer, my first year out of University of Texas School of Law, I clerked for the United States Court of Appeals for the Fifth Circuit, the very court where this case is right now. The judge I worked for was appointed by Dwight Eisenhower. His name was John R. Brown, a famous civil rights and maritime law jurist. I do my own appeals in the 35 years that I've been a lawyer, and I've never lost in the Fifth Circuit. One day I will, okay? But so far, so good. What I will tell you is this bill, this 10 Commandments bill, has been found unconstitutional in every state where it's been tested. Who brings it up this time? MAGA Mays Middleton, my senator. And I know Mays, and he doesn't believe any of this. He's a rich boy from River Oaks who has inherited a great deal of money from his father's oil and gas business. he is funding his campaign. He said, I got $10 million, says I'm going to be the next Attorney General. And that's how he's approached his career, the ladder from the House to the Senate. Now he wants to be the Attorney General. One thing I'll give him, unlike Nathan, he went ahead and just said, you know what, I'm cashing in on my Senate race. I'm not doing this thing halfway through the term, so if I lose, I'm still a senator. So I will give him that. But let me tell you something, James. He's not going to win this one. MAGA Mays, I have dreams about debating him in November because while he wound up suing the Galveston Independent School District to hang the framed Ten Commandments that he furnished them, my wife and I raised $2.2 million for the school so that they wouldn't have to sell a closed school and turn it back into a park. That's a big difference.
Thank you, Mayor Jaworski. Senator Johnson, this question is for you. The incumbent Attorney General has recused himself from defending state agencies in several high-profile cases, one in which he refused to defend the Texas Ethics Commission in an election law case, and another in which he sided against the Secretary of State's office in calling for the Texas Republican primary to be able to close its election to include only registered Republican voters. Are there instances in which you think it is appropriate for the Attorney General to recuse the office from a case, and if so, what should be the criteria for that?
Certainly not Ken Paxton's criteria. Ken has a history of recusing himself from representing agencies if doing so would make him politically uncomfortable or appear like anything other than a right-wing nut. That's not an appropriate criteria. You are charged with representing the agencies. Frequently, it can be in a very important cause. For example, the Texas Commission on Environmental Quality might get sued by a polluting agency and saying, oh, your standards are too tough. And Ken Paxton would probably say, I'm not going to defend you. Use your own budget. Oh, wait, you don't have a budget. Sorry, you don't have a lawyer. He really has used it for political advantage, and I would not do that. It would be my obligation to represent every agency in every case. Now, if the agency itself is in error, if the agency itself is being inappropriately managed, then the position of the state is probably going to be somewhat uncomfortable for that agency. In that instance, I can either represent the agency or give the agency the option of getting their own counsel with their own budget, and I don't think that's inappropriate in every case. Or if there is a conflict of interest, if I own a lot of oil wells that are relevant to that dispute, I probably wouldn't be on the stage tonight because I don't. So if there's a conflict of interest, sure, recuse yourself and have the agency represent themselves.
Senator, just to clarify, you're saying if you believe that the statute or the agency's policy is not legally sound, you would advise them to remedy that?
I would advise them to fix it if they can, absolutely. In fact, I would probably try to get them to settle out of court and say, hey, stop screwing up. That's what good lawyers do. And that is part of the job. You advise the agencies. You don't just adopt their position in court. If they want me to file a brief that says, sorry, we were wrong, they could keep me as their lawyer. Otherwise, I would have to get different counsel or file my advice to not break the law any longer or take a different position. This is where it's important to be able to work with people, to provide good advice, to persuade them to change course if necessary. That's something that comes through experience. I have that experience, and I'm comfortable stepping into that role.
Thank you, Senator Johnson. Mayor Jaworski, same question, 2 minutes.
Yeah, so conflicts of interest, we lawyers know, are covered by the Texas Rules of Disciplinary Procedure. And so it would be real easy for me as Attorney General to simply apply the same rules that I have been using for 35 years as an attorney in courts all over the state and the nation. Let me tell you something. The ethics rules in Texas are a joke, and they need to be reformed. Some Dallas readers may remember in the Dallas Morning News, I published an op-ed back in 2024 that said billionaires are running Texas. And while I talked about how much money goes in, and we all know the horror stories about Tim Dunn and paying Dan Patrick to guarantee an acquittal in Ken Paxton's trial, nobody investigated that because, of course, the Attorney General would be the one investigating it.
Mayor Jaworski, if I could ask you to be specific about your criteria for recusal.
Yeah, I just told you the Texas disciplinary rules of procedure. And so what that means is if there is a conflict, if somehow a representation or a property interest that I have prevents me from fully exercising my duty as a lawyer, I have to step back. But the great thing about the Attorney General's office is there is a long list of talent, ideally. It needs to be nourished, James. And so when we hire all sorts of good lawyers and keep business within the agency, we will be able to employ another legal doctrine called the Chinese Wall. If Joe Jaworski, for example, is unable to serve without conflict, well, then someone else in the office will have to do it. If we can't do it as an office, then there are a number of ways the state can get counsel on an outside basis. But as you know, James, that is where Ken Paxton falls really short. He is spending so much of our tax dollars hiring outside lawyers and letting them get the benefit, like the Google settlement the other day. Because of Paxton's notorious conduct, credible attorneys
against the state.
Day one, I will file pleadings in whatever court that lawsuit is in, reversing the state's position. It's unconstitutional. The new Office of Attorney General will stand with the Texas House Democrats.
Thank you. Senator Johnson, same question.
Same answer.
Senator Johnson, let's stick with you, and we'll stay with election laws. Republican leaders in the state have called for greater involvement by the Attorney General's office in election fraud cases, claiming that Democratic district attorneys are not prosecuting them and hurting the credibility of elections. They've passed a law to make it easier for the Attorney General to get involved when local district attorneys choose not to pursue a case. What do you believe is the appropriate role of the Attorney General's office in election fraud cases?
It's actually a more complicated question than just what's the appropriate role. The legislature just passed a bill saying that the Attorney General can prosecute election fraud cases, and that's new. Previously, the Attorney General could not. But what makes it more complex is that law itself is unconstitutional. The reason that that was a dumb bill, well, it's a legitimate question. There's a lot of states, including Democratic-led states, where the Attorney General can prosecute election fraud cases if local district attorneys can't. It's a legitimate question. What's not legitimate is for the legislature to reapportion authority between branches of government. And there is a Texas Court of Criminal Appeals opinion that struck down Ken Paxton's attempt to prosecute election fraud because it took power from the judicial branch, which is district attorneys, and put it in the executive branch, which is the Attorney General. And the court said you can't do that. So you know what Ken Paxton did? He funded a bunch of Republican challengers and primaried those judges and beat them. Those judges are gone. These guys are bad. If they don't like a correct ruling, they replace the judge. We really have got to get some Democrats in office at this point, at the judicial level, the legislative level, and the executive level. Do I think it's appropriate? Look, right now, no. I'm not necessarily opposed to a good Attorney General having that authority if we have bad district attorneys that won't prosecute fraud. So far, I'm aware of 0 instances of it, and I am aware of rampant abuse of power in the Attorney General's office. I'm fine with the powers I have. I'm fine with cultivating good relationships with district attorneys in any county in the state and making sure that the law is enforced. And believe me, with a big enough microphone in the Attorney General's office, it will be enforced. At this time, I would not expand the Attorney General's power into that realm.
Thank you, Senator Johnson. Mayor Jaworski, same question, 2 minutes.
Yeah. So a lot of this witchery that's happening with the Republicans in power, making it scary to vote, is because they want to stop people of color from voting and exercising their power. That is exactly what's happening. You can't tell me it ain't true. And I know you won't. So what can we do about that in the larger scheme of things? I agree with the chronology of some things that we've heard. We need more voters. So the new Office of Attorney General under Joe Jaworski will have a division of elections and voter encouragement. So let's flip the script. Voter suppression, voter encouragement. So right now, going to the polls ought not to be that confusing. It ought not to be something where you may get, indicted. Instead, it needs to be a lot easier. So here's a plan. Here's a plan, James. When I'm Attorney General, in the first week, we're going to send a letter out to every high school principal because the Attorney General is supposed to enforce the laws of the state, right? Well, did you know that there's been a law on the books since 1985? It's from a Dallas legislator. It's in the Texas Election Code, Section 13.046D as in David, and it says every high school principal private, public, charter, religious, it makes no distinction, must register the kids twice a year in the senior class. This is twice a year. And so how is it that 18-year-olders are graduating from our schools not registered to vote? It's the simplest thing to do. And so the high school principal can do it. He can have the League of Women Voters come in. He can designate someone on the staff to do it. The Attorney General will send a letter reminding the principal. Congratulations on the beginning of spring semester, Mrs. Principal. This is Joe Jaworski. Please tell us the date and time and method that you'll be offering registration, and we'll be there to support you.
Thank you, Mayor Jaworski. Let's stick with you and turn to immigration. This campaign cycle, multiple candidates for statewide office on the Republican side have questioned the state's practice of funding public education for children who entered the country illegally. The precedent for that comes from the 1982 Texas case, Plyler versus Doe. If Texas lawmakers passed a law that prevented the state from educating undocumented children, how would you handle that as the state's top law enforcement officer?
Yeah, what a backwards way of going about things. Public education is the great equalizer. And immigration is one of the great American values. My family immigrated here from Germany in 1902. Wasn't that long ago. And so where my heart is with the people that want the American dream, wherever they're coming from, as long as they don't break the law. And see, James, underneath this whole thing is this conflation that Republicans love to do, conflating two beautiful American institutions, criminal justice, immigration. They are not the same. But they like to conflate them because they like to cast the working poor, the immigrants who are coming here, since they aren't white, as criminals. That is the wrong frame. We want to educate the young people in our state. Did you know that after the last legislative session, the 89th legislation, Mays Middleton again tried to undo the Texas DREAM Act, which is golden educational policy. It says if you're a dreamer and you graduate from a high school and been there at least 3 years and you indicate your willingness to stand for citizenship at the next opportunity, you get in-state tuition. And it survived another attack, as it always has every 2 years since 2001. As children were receiving their diplomas and celebrating, maybe the first in their family to ever go to college, James, Ken Paxton and Pam Bondi colluded not too far from here in the Northern District of Texas to file a lawsuit, which Ken Paxton didn't just not answer, he said, "Where do I sign?" And Reed O'Connor, Trump's favorite federal judge in Texas, ruled the Texas DREAM Act void. And so kids started getting letters that we can't honor your tuition bill. That's outrageous.
Senator Johnson, same question.
And I'm sorry, what's the question?
Yes, let me repeat that for you. If Texas lawmakers passed a law that prevented the state from educating undocumented children, how would you handle that as the state's top law enforcement officer?
I believe we have binding precedent in the courts already that says we have to provide an education to every child in this state.
Right. The question is because because Republican candidates on the campaign trail, including on executive offices like the controller, are saying that they want to get rid of Plyler versus Doe.
Yeah, they're not usually bound by the Constitution in their legislation. They're just not. The Attorney General routinely doesn't sue the legislature. It doesn't usually sue to invalidate a law. There is some precedent for that in the country. I expect that a lawsuit would be brought promptly by somebody, and the Attorney General has the power to file an amicus brief, and that amicus brief is going to side with Plyler versus Doe. The problem we've come to in this state right now is what used to be sort of political theater to try to get elected, to agitate the primary voting base on the Republican side, just crazy shit that everybody knew this stuff would not come out of the legislature, right? Somehow it's going to stop. The Senate used to stop it. It's no longer that effective. Then the House used to stop it, but now these kind of antics, saying crazy stuff like passing a law that directly contravenes judicial authority, actually passes. It's really stunning. So I think it's all the more important. Again, the Attorney General's office, what we're all here talking about tonight, is one of the most important offices, not just in Texas, but in the entire country. Because, again, what used to be political theater is now political reality. And the Attorney General does have the power to block that stuff. So I would do everything within the power of the Attorney General's office to invalidate that law.
Thank you. Senator Johnson, we'll stick with you. The incumbent Attorney General has started using a 150-year-old statute to serve nonprofits and businesses with requests to examine business records to ensure that these organizations were not breaking the law or violating their charters to do business with the state. If a business or nonprofit does not comply, the state can revoke their business license. Attorney General Ken Paxton has used these tactics against nonprofit groups that have political philosophies different from his, such as Annunciation House in El Paso, which aids undocumented immigrants, and JOLT, a Latino political group that works to register voters. So far, the Attorney General has not proven any of these cases in court, but the compounding legal expenses have become a huge financial burden for these nonprofits who say they are being targeted for political motives. The Attorney General's office contends it wants to make sure these groups are following the law and the charters they entered into with the state. Is this an appropriate use of this law, and would you continue using this tactic?
The Attorney General is lying. What he's doing is inappropriate. It's a continuation of what he started with the big lie with the Trump protest about losing the election last time, when Ken Paxton spent 22,000 staff hours searching for voter fraud. I think he found like 5 people who forgot to update their address. To date, I think there may be 34 pending cases of minor voting infractions. This is all garbage. This is political persecution. He's suing the Catholic Charities who are trying to keep people alive. The JOLT case, I don't know the details. You never know what actually happened, but I have no reason to think that there's anything at all behind this stuff other than using inappropriately, and I think Joe and I agree on this, inappropriately using the 4,000 employees and the $1 billion budget of the Attorney General's office to advance a political agenda through ruthless political persecution of people who are actually trying to make the world a better place. And it's disgusting. It would cease when I'm in office. The Attorney General does have the power and the obligation to investigate private corporations, private philanthropies. Philanthropies are sometimes scams too. It's not an inappropriate exercise of power to investigate and make sure. In fact, it's actually in the Constitution that the Attorney General has to make sure that private entities are operating within the law. That's okay. The way he's done it is an embarrassment to the state and an affront to democracy and an affront to our entire society here. It's got to end.
Thank you, Senator Johnson. Mayor Jaworski, are these requests to examine an appropriate use, are these requests to examine appropriate, and if not, what is the appropriate use of this statute?
Ken Paxton, like any Attorney General, has the right to request for documents. It's called a inspection and a document inspection. It's a lot like what you see in lawsuits. But the question is that really what he's doing? I mean, Annunciation House is a fabulous nonprofit. It's associated with Catholic Charities. It's in El Paso. It was helping immigrants who were literally starving on the streets. In fact, I think there was a request by the El Paso City Council to work with these people. It was a way of addressing a public safety issue. People were dying in the streets. That's not America. But you see, Ken Paxton wasn't investigating some inappropriate nonprofit business. He was investigating, why are you helping immigrants? That's not good for the Republican Party. So the CID that James is talking about is a completely legitimate tool for an Attorney General. This is before you sue someone, you want to investigate them. Well, it's just who the target is. You remember, James, the CID was what he used against Beto O'Rourke, because Beto was exercising his First Amendment right to be heard on the question of the quorum break and supporting our heroes who went to Chicago and California and Boston. Ken Paxton investigated power by people, and good for Beto. He said, fine.
Mayor Jaworski, is there an appropriate appropriate use that you could see?
Oh yeah, you could absolutely do a certificate. You could do an investigation of, for example, United Healthcare and Blue Cross Blue Shield and Humana to find out why they're not paying claims on time and why they are not paying mental health claims of our teenagers who are sometimes becoming and sometimes real suicidal. Why aren't you paying those? Because the federal law, James, says that all insurers shall insure mental health just like physical health. I'd love to investigate that.
Thank you, Mayor Jaworski. We received a question from 16-year-old Graham here in North Texas, and we'll start with you, Mayor Jaworski. Graham asks, what is your plan to further mitigate damage to Texas and the U.S. by the radical right and Trump efficiently and quickly?
Man, listen to the youth. They know what's going on. Yeah, no, look, democracy is on fire. So what I'll do upon taking the oath of office is file lawsuits like reversing the Texas DREAM Act void, like putting the map that we passed in 2021, as flawed as it was, back, like filing lawsuits that support the people, not the Republican political party. And then secondly, we will have 3 divisions. And one is the division of affordability, which will look to the young people of the state, and we will use the law so that young Texans can afford the American dream. Think about appearing, for example, as the Attorney General before the Public Utility Commission, so that there's finally someone speaking against Encore raising the rates twice a year, Centerpoint down in Houston. Well, how about going against all the people that are scamming people, like, used car lots that don't follow the Lemon Law? The best thing we can do for this young Texan who asked this question is to put Democrats in office and let us lead, and we start winning elections by our conduct. And so that would be the answer to me. Secondly, we're going to spend a lot of time suing Trump in the dying quivers of his 4-year term, whatever's left of it. What I'm counting on is United States Congress having a majority in the House, and that we're going to impeach this man. We'll see what happens in the Senate. But just remember, you need a fighter who isn't going to cut deals with the Republicans in the legislature. These people who have sold their souls to Donald Trump and take us along with them have another thing coming. The Attorney General is going to be the lawyer for 32 million people, and that includes all the 16-year-olds in the state, and we're going to register them to vote when they're 18.
Thank you, Mayor Jaworski. Senator Johnson, same question, and I want to clarify, these are Graham's words, not mine.
Okay, I want to give Graham a note of encouragement. It's outside Texas, unfortunately. There are 23, now 24 Democratic attorneys general in this country, and another one at the District of Columbia. They have been the only thing that has been successful at slowing down the damage that Graham cites, the damage of the Trump administration, the damage of that whole wave. In fact, I think as of today, I never would have thought this would be a good thing, but it is a good thing. As of today, Democratic attorneys general in this country have sued the Trump administration 77 times, 42 times successfully. They have blocked 42 destructive Trump actions, including funding for the National Institute of Mental Health, including the illegal firing of federal employees, including getting back funding that was previously appropriated for public education, but not Texas. Because the law has changed. There used to be the possibility of a single federal court judge issuing a nationwide injunction when Trump does something stupid. But now we have to go jurisdiction by jurisdiction by jurisdiction. And because we have a lapdog for Donald Trump as an attorney general, he does not join the other Democratic attorneys general. So when Trump withholds $700 million from our schools, when he withholds $300 million for solar panels for low-income families in Houston, our attorney general doesn't do anything about it. So we don't get the money. It's gone. We are losing out. So one thing I would do, Graham, is join the team of the 24 Democratic district attorneys in this country who are doing great work in Minnesota, in California, in Oregon, in New York, all over the country. We can work as a team to stop some of the damage. Second thing I do is something that both the state and the federal government has failed. I'm about out of time. Ramp up consumer protection. Ramp up antitrust enforcement. Anybody who contributed to Trump's ballroom is a suspect.
Senator Johnson, let's stick with you and turn to the subject of abortion. Last year, the state legislature passed House Bill 7, the so-called abortion pill bill, that allows private citizens in Texas to sue anyone who manufactures, distributes, mails, or provides abortion pills to or from Texas. Successful plaintiffs would be awarded $100,000, and the state law includes a provision that it cannot be challenged in state court and that bars defendants from recovering legal costs even if they successfully defend themselves in court. Would you enforce such a law? And if not, how is the state supposed to enforce the laws, a task the Attorney General's office is tasked with executing?
No way. I argued against this bill for many hours on the Senate floor. I managed to, I forget the numbers, but I managed to expose, I don't know, a dozen unconstitutional provisions, and it died in the House largely because I revealed how unconstitutional the thing was, how cartoonishly, absurdly unconstitutional it was. You mentioned $100,000. At one point in the bill, a plaintiff could bring a suit to try to win $100,000, and if the judge dared exercise their constitutional obligation to review the bill for constitutionality, that same person could sue the judge for $100,000. And I'm talking to my colleagues in the Senate. They all voted for this. I mean, you guys, that's the judicial branch of government. That's what they do. They review our bills. You can't pass a bill that says you can't review my bill. And they're like, yeah, we can. It was the craziest thing I've ever seen in 4 terms in the Senate. Now, they got rid of that provision. They got rid of they got rid of a lot of the very bad stuff, but there's still a lot of very bad stuff remaining. I believe that it is still unconstitutional. No, I would not enforce that bill. I had to burn a lot of late hours researching and trying to find all the things they did. What was interesting there, and this also gives us some hope, some of our best allies in fighting that absurd bill were not members of the legislature. They weren't staffers of the legislature. I had lawyers from around the state calling me because it was a really long bill and it was written in a closet by a troll in Washington, D.C. I'm sorry. No, yeah, he's a troll. Trying to find all the different ways. We managed to get a lot of the garbage out of there, but it's still passed in a still very unconstitutional, mean form in the second, third, or fourth special session. So I think that bill is destined for the scrap heap. I think even Texas courts will strike that down.
Mayor Jaworski, same question, 2 minutes.
Yeah, James, that bill may as well be called the Hire Jonathan Mitchell Act. This is the former Solicitor General for Ken Paxton, and he has made a little niche practice of suing friends of women who sought an abortion either through medicine or other means. And Jonathan Mitchell has a law office in a very cushy place in Austin, Texas, so he has great access to Dan Patrick and Greg Abbott. The good news is he filed one of these lawsuits down in Galveston. Now, while the judges are elected on the Republican side in Galveston, there's a lot of them that are really Democrats, in my opinion, and they're just running to get elected. And I saw that on one of these cases where a woman was frantic because her abusive boyfriend got back together with her for one night, she became pregnant, she realized she was pregnant, she could not possibly have this man's child. So she asked her friends for help, and they got her the dual medication, mifepristone, misoprostol. She took it, she miscarried. Somehow, her ex got a hold of her phone, copied the texts, and hired Jonathan Mitchell. So he gets to be the headhunter and gets paid because of the fact that this woman enforced her equal right to decide when to start her family and her God-given right to survive a difficult pregnancy. Jonathan Mitchell lost that case because good pro bono attorneys came to the Friends' aids and beat the John Mitchell team in Galveston County Court. I've never been more proud of the judge there and the jury.
Mayor Jaworski, let's stick with you. The state legislature last year passed the so-called Life of the Mother Act, intended to clarify for doctors when they could perform life-saving abortions. Critics have said the law does not change much and legitimizes the state's near-total abortion ban. Supporters say it provides crucial instruction to prevent deaths of more pregnant women because doctors were too scared to act. What is the role of the Attorney General in enforcing the Life of the Mother Act?
Well, it's a constitutional right to live your life. Women have an equal right to stay alive than men do. And so they also have an equal right to decide when to start their families. Biologically, they become pregnant, men don't. So why does the man get to call the shots on this? Isn't it an equal right? So the Attorney General ought to be looking to the Texas Constitution and the United States Constitution to decide what's right. Look, I'm horrified that Roe v. Wade, which was an excellent, pragmatic way of approaching things for decades, is no longer the law, especially since all these jurists who elevated to the highest court in the land had all pled fealty to stare decisis, or that's Latin for we'll follow the law if it's already settled. That's what they said in their confirmation hearing, and they clearly had to change of heart once they were robed. And as Judge Brown, who I worked for that year, James, told us, you were appointed, not anointed. Well, Judge, you're right, but these Supreme Court justices sometimes don't get it. Well, the point is the Attorney General has to enforce the law, but you're a lawyer, damn it, and you have a duty of discretion. I took an oath, just like the oath I took when I was mayor of Galveston, the oath I took when I married my wife, Rebecca, here in Dallas, and the oath Rebecca and I both took when we graduated from University of Texas School of Law. And it said that we would preserve, protect, and defend the Constitution. So I've got a brain, I've got a mind, I've got a heart. And James, the way I'm going to interpret these things will be a lot more liberal than Ken Paxton, I can tell you that. I will side with what's right and very good for the women on this question.
Thank you, Mayor. Senator Johnson, same question to you. What is the role of the Attorney General in enforcing the Life of the Mother Act? 2 minutes.
A little context of it, the Life of the Mother Act came along because the Republicans found that they went even too far for their own selves when they realized that women were dying because of their cruel and awful abortion ban. So they introduced a law to try to make it easier for doctors to perform abortions in emergency situations without fear of being persecuted by the state. What really prompted that was a woman who was at risk of going into sepsis, and she sued the state in order to get an abortion, and a state district court judge issued a ruling over the objection of Ken Paxton's lawyer team that she could get an abortion under Texas law. And within an hour, Ken Paxton put out a menacing threat that no statement by any district court judge is going to protect any judge, doctor, or person from the force of the law and the wrath of the Attorney General's office if a woman gets an abortion. It was just awful. And that woman did go into septic shock, and she almost died, and she left the state, and she got an abortion. There are several women right now, they call themselves the storytellers, who are relaying to the country their experiences of losing their fertility, losing their child, losing a whole lot. The Attorney General's role is not to persecute women, their husbands, their mothers, their physicians, or organizations that help them. And I actually filed the law to prevent Texas from trying to go after anybody who helps a woman leave the state to get an abortion. The role of the Attorney General is going to be deferential to a state district court judge that examines that law as modified, that permits a woman to meet the exception in state law for an abortion, and not have a mean, politically minded Attorney General looking over their shoulder, but is respectful to the women and respectful to the judges who understand their plight and preserve their lives.
Thank you, Senator. Senator, we'll stick with you, and we're turning to the subject of THC. Senator Johnson, Mayor Jaworski has questioned your vote on the legislature's ban on THC consumables in the last legislative session. You voted for the ban when it first left the Senate, but then voted against it when it returned from the House as an all-out ban on THC consumables. Can you clarify for voters your position on THC consumables? 2 minutes.
I would love to clarify my position. First of all, recognize that I filed in the special session following the regular session the most comprehensive THC regulatory regime and decriminalization of marijuana anywhere in the United States of America. Because the Republicans said they were going to do it, and they didn't. Now, there were multiple votes. If you want to see what Nathan Johnson's position is on the THC ban, or anybody's position on anything in the legislature, check their final vote. This is a 140-day process, and each vote you take has an effect. Sometimes it determines whether or not the bill passes or fails. Very often it doesn't. Sometimes it sends a message. Sometimes it's leverage. It's not deal cutting. It's strategy. I've been trying for 8 years to decriminalize marijuana, which has been used for racial injustice and bad policy that has held down individuals, families, and communities. And at the time this ban is being proposed, which was stupid, by the way, and I opposed the ban in concept, and I said so in the record even when I voted for the ban the first time, what came to light is that a 10-year-old could walk into a gas station and buy THC in high concentrations right next to the Skittles, totally unregulated. I had full assurances from everybody in the House, Democrat and Republican, that no ban was going to pass. So I said to my staff, I'm going to help this thing out of here to send a message. We've got to regulate this stuff. If this thing comes back still a ban, I will vote against it. In the meantime, I've got the attention of people in Lieutenant Governor's office that if they ban THC, they better decriminalize any use of THC or marijuana, and I had that bill pending. It was strategy. It came back a ban. I voted against it. I said, okay, they're not going to do it, I'm going to. So I met with growers, I met with sellers, I met with vendors, I met with people who use THC and crafted the most comprehensive, fair legislation in the country, which to date it still is.
That's time. Thank you, Senator. Mayor Jaworski, 1 minute to respond.
Yeah, I criticized him because, he was for the ban before he was against the ban. And so that struck me as something that was duplicitous. Let me tell you something. I have been for full legalization of marijuana in Texas since my 22 cycle campaign, and I haven't changed my mind. It was great to watch Dan Patrick and Greg Abbott duke it out. It was, as you recall, Greg Abbott vetoed Patrick's ban at the 11th hour, almost the 12th hour, and it was really something to behold. Now, of course, Donald Trump is getting involved from a national perspective, while still putting marijuana on a different schedule so it can be studied. The bottom line is, in Oklahoma, in New Mexico, in Louisiana, in Arkansas, it's so much easier to get access to it. It's almost free, And so Texas needs to understand, like gaming, that we need to provide for our people. We're 32 million. Let's do it.
Thank you, Mayor Jaworski. Senator Johnson, do you want to take 1 more minute to rebut anything?
Yeah, I would. I think duplicitous is not a very nice word, and it demonstrates kind of a mean-spiritedness as well as a lack of understanding of the legislative process. This is a process. I did send a message. I want to point out that Roland Gutierrez, one of the strongest advocates for legalization of marijuana, voted the same way I did. Y'all, we work in that building within an environment that's hermetically sealed from reality, trying to get to 140 days when what comes out is real. Don't ever accuse me of being duplicitous. I use every power I have in that office to reach the right outcome, and I did in this case, and I will again.
Thank you so much. We now turn to our closing remarks. Senator Johnson opened, so Mayor Jaworski will close. You will have 2 minutes.
As Galveston mayor after Hurricane Ike, I fought bullies and racists who threatened me politically because I was steadfast in my support for rebuilding first-class public housing for Galveston's working poor. I got the housing built, and I'm proud to say to you that it's first class because Galveston's workers deserve dignity. But it cost me re-election. I could have betrayed my constituents. I was offered a chance to sell them out and run for re-election unopposed, Nathan, but I told the cabal who offered me that outrageous deal to go to hell. That's proof of courage in office. And if you make me your next Attorney General, I'll summon that courage when fighting Trump and MAGA. Nathan Johnson, however, compromised his Democratic affiliation to a level that should concern us all. To keep his cherished committee vice chairmanship awarded him by Dan Patrick, Nathan sided too often with Senate MAGA Republicans. In the 89th legislature, Johnson voted for SB 2972, suppressing free speech. He voted for Proposition 16, a constitutional amendment clarifying that a voter must be a United States citizen. He signed on to the MAHA agenda and voted to limit SNAP benefits for the working poor. He voted to ban pride flags in Texas public schools. In 2023, he voted to acquit Ken Paxton on 2 demonstrably proven counts of impeachment, and he publicly declared in a 2024 primary debate that he would not support Democrats who run against his seated Republican colleagues. What kind of Democrat says this? Maybe a moderate Democrat who wants to be effective in cutting deals with Republicans, but it's not what we want in our top lawyer. Our next Attorney General must be unflinching in his mission, which is to protect the vulnerable, not compromise with the powerful. Folks, we get one shot at our nominee for Attorney General, and there's no takebacks. We need a Democratic nominee who offers no quarter to MAGA.
Thank you, Mayor Jaworski. Senator Johnson, you have 2 minutes for your closing remarks.
Analysts in Texas are right now saying that the Attorney General's race is the Democrats' best hope to take a seat, to flip a statewide office. The stakes could not be higher. You know what's happening in the country. You know what's happening in the state. I find it very disappointing that instead of elevating the Democratic brand, my opponent has chosen to run a cartoonishly dishonest and misleadingly negative campaign. I don't have time here tonight to refute every mischaracterization of everything that Joe said, but there's a reason that I'm endorsed by the more progressive legislators in Texas. There's a reason I've been at the front of every single fight. And yes, I voted to ban the swastika and the Confederate flag. Yes, I voted to keep the Proud Boys off of campuses. Yes, I voted to convict Ken Paxton 14 times. And this guy who wants to be Attorney General thinks I should violate my oath and convict on 2 counts where there wasn't evidence? That's why even the Democrats didn't vote convict on that count. This is dishonest. You need a few things in a Democratic candidate. You need somebody who can beat Republicans. I have. You need someone who will fight the fight and restrain the Republicans. I have. You need somebody who knows how to use the power of government for the good of the people, and for 8 years I have. And finally, we don't need somebody who attacks good Democrats, because when he attacks me, he attacks my colleagues. My colleagues voted the same way I did. Is he the only one who noticed it? We need Democrats who lift each other up. They got to win, they got to fight, they got to deliver, and they got to lift up. Because newsflash, folks, Democrats have had tailwinds before. We've had great candidates at the top of the ticket before, and we've lost before. 48% is our ceiling unless we have a great AG candidate. If you get me through this primary, I will bring 3 points to this election that nobody else does, and we will all hit 51%. Because I will lift up, I have spent my time in office lifting up the Democratic Party. I will do so as your Attorney General candidate.
Thank you, Senator Johnson. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you to Senator Johnson and Mayor Jaworski. That's the end of the debate. I believe Jenny Laughlin has some comments.
Wow, thank you guys so much for being on stage tonight, for agreeing to do this. This was really important conversation and getting to clarify things and make points that I think are going to make a difference to how people decide to vote. And with that, I'm just going to say thank you to you for coming out tonight. I hope that you will push this out on your socials, on to your friends. It will be living on our YouTube channel, RAD Richardson Democrats YouTube, I believe it is. But you can watch it again if you need to. Get it out there. This is important information. And beyond that, it's getting close to time to vote. So thank you. Go vote.